Now, Seiko has so many beloved diver watches within their catalog. Whether you're looking at the entry-level SKXs, the Turtles, looking at the Samurais, and then also just the Marine Masters and Tunas. There's so many different watches out there available and are just so beloved by enthusiasts. However, today in this video, we're going to be looking at some new releases from another popular line from Seiko with their Seiko Sumo family, looking at 3 new references with the SPB 175, the SPB 177, and the SPB 179. All right, guys, now before we jump into this video, I do have a blog looking at 40 very popular Seiko lines, and when talking about references, probably over 100, has to be over 100, maybe more than that. So if you have not seen that blog, link down below in the description. While you're there though, also check out the different watches and straps available on the website, full authorized dealer, and you can also get a discount, 5% off your first order. Would love to show you what going authorized is all about. But now before we look at these 3 new pieces, I think it's good to understand a little bit of backstory on the Sumo collection. Now, the Seiko Sumo was first unveiled in 2007 and quickly became one of the more beloved Seiko professional divers out there with their angled and defined case, pronounced lugs, and unique handset. The original generation of the Sumos featured the popular 6R15 movement and came with a simple colorway across the models, with the SBDC 001, the SBDC 003, and the SBDC 005. But in 2019, the Sumo family received a couple more modern additions, which really serve as the baseline of what these models here today really kind of built off of. The references were the SPB 101 and the SPB 103. They were trimmed down from the case thickness side of things. They upped the movement with a newer 6R35 with an elevated power reserve. With their acceptance in the marketplace, we now have 3 models that we're going to be looking at here today, with the SPB 175 coming in a gray dial, the SPB 177 coming in a green dial, and the SPB 179 that will be the center of our focus today, with its stunning textured dial coming in light blue and a dark blue bezel. Now, these pieces draw inspiration from different cold and icy conditions and resemble the essential equipment needed for the Japanese Antarctic research expedition. But now, looking at these watches from a high level, we have a case size of 45 millimeters, thickness 12.7 millimeters, lug width of 20 millimeters, lug to lug of 52 millimeters, water resistance of 200 meters, movement is an automatic Seiko 6R35, crystal is sapphire with anti-reflective coating, the crown is screw down, and price $900. Now, first starting with these watches on the wrist, we have a pretty typical wearing experience for those familiar with the Sumo family. The watch lives up to its name for the most part with its large case diameter that doesn't really wear to that same expected degree given the thickness being relatively thin for a diver of this stature at 12.7 millimeters. The one aspect of this piece that needs to be considered though is that lug to lug distance coming in at 52 millimeters. So the lugs on these pieces are quite large, both vertically and horizontally. They will extend out quite a bit on a smaller wrist, but I would say that these watches were closer to say like a 43 millimeter case in totality. However, those looking in the direction of this piece probably already know what they're getting into. For my 6¼ inch wrist, I am sized probably out of wearing these watches, but I think for someone say 6¾ inch wrist or 17.1 centimeters and above should have no problem pulling these off, especially if they decide to go with a NATO strap on this, as I think it would just hug to the wrist even more. I will say though, the bracelet, because of its hollow end lengths, is going to wear rather tight on the wrist and really just wear to that maximum lug to lug distance. Looking at the case in a bit more detail, we have a mix of brushing and polishing, which is perhaps the easiest to notice when looking at the lugs themselves. As mentioned prior, these lugs are rather thick, and I think when contrasted with the 20 millimeter lug width on this case at 45 millimeters, it does offer a rather peculiar look when balancing between these case proportions. The lugs have a deeply angled design and remind me greatly of the Seiko LX that I reviewed earlier this year, and considering that watch is $6,000, I think that speaks highly of what is being done here. The lugs featured are drilled to help with swapping different straps on this piece if you do opt to go without this bracelet. The bracelet comes in a 3-link style and meets at the case well with a hollow end link, which again will make the watch wear pretty true to that lug to lug distance on the bracelet. The bracelet comes in mostly a brush finish though, with polished outer portions of that center link. The bracelet is pin and collar adjustable, and the links themselves are not bad in their articulation and their comfort, but the clasp leaves a bit to be desired, especially with the watch approaching $1,000 in its price. The clasp is pressed. It features a fold over lock as well, and a 2-button release with an array of 4 micro adjustment points as well. But if it was up for me, I definitely would try to accompany this watch with a NATO strap, perhaps a gray or a brown if we're looking at this blue dial variant, as I think it would really complement the larger case, the lugs, and allowing it to wear a little bit more casual. Looking along the right side of the case, we have a screw down crown located at the fore, which can be operated in typical fashion following the unscrewing, manually winding the Sumo at the first position, changing the date at the second position, and at the third position, adjusting all the time while stopping the second hand in the process at that farthest position. The bezel along the outside comes in stainless steel with a kind of glossy reflective surface that mirrors the finish of a typical aluminum bezel, and this one on the 179 really helps make the dial pop. The bezel comes in a 120 click, has a notable audible click, and is smooth in its action, featuring a lume triangular tip at the 12. Another important note is the bezel actually slightly tilts down towards the dial end of the bezel. It kind of meets that flat sapphire crystal, which is going to provide view of the dial within. So as mentioned, when looking at these new pieces, I think there was one that really stood out of the trio, and that was the 179 with its stunning blue dial. So starting with the dial outskirts, we have a steep chapter ring that matches the dial color with an icy powdered blue. Along the outside of the dial, we have applied markers containing Lumibrite, and also the hands also containing that, which will shine very strongly when the lights are out, and even in dim lighting conditions. I think this is just fantastic lume on these. At the 12 o'clock, the printing of Seiko's logo in black printed text, and the 6 o'clock, the diver's mark with the 200 meters of water resistance rating being referenced, and the Prospex logo featured just above. At the 3 o'clock, we have a date window that features a cyclops to magnify that window underneath. This is the design trait that kind of been seeing rolled out quite a bit more within Seiko's divers. I just reviewed the Seiko King Turtle, which also featured a cyclops over the date. I can link to that video down below where I compare it to an LX. If you've not seen that video, pretty cool video to show the differences of quality between that more $600 watch versus a $6,000 watch. The dial surface on this watch, I think it's really just a big selling trait. Not only does it come in this light blue that really just brings a unique take, rarely seen in the world of divers especially, it also comes with this pressed waffle style surface that adds an elevated level of texture and just looks great when examining up close with a macro lens. Flipping the watch over, we have view of a closed screw down case back that features a Prospex polished emblem at the center. But within the case of this piece, we have a newer, higher level 6R movement within with the 6R35. Now the 6R35 was first introduced in 2019 and has just kind of been gradually making its way into more of Seiko's watches. The 6R15 is certainly elevated in comparison to say the 4R35 and their 7S26, more entry-level movements, but when you're getting up to that $1,000 price tier, I think it was definitely worthy of a refresh. Now the 6R35 comes with an impressive 70-hour power reserve, extending 20 hours more from the 6R15. It operates at the same beat rate at 3 Hz, 21,600 vibrations per hour, features hacking and hand winding, has an out-of-the-box accuracy of -15 to +25 seconds a day, but in typical Seiko fashion, usually you can expect movements operating well within these parameters. Now, those that know me know that I like Seiko. I just admire the brand greatly. And the Seiko Sumo, I think, is a very interesting proposition for the brand. You again have their more entry-level offerings, which are always going to be popular, but I think that nice window between getting into their higher level Prospex series or say their Marine Masters or the LX models, you have the Seiko Sumo. Because one of the challenges in the past was looking at the 6R15 and whether it was really a movement worthy of seeing in watches around $1,000, if not more. But I think the 6R35 with its extended power reserve, I think these new dial colors are really welcomed. And I think the Sumo, for those people that want a larger, sturdy Prospex diver from Seiko, is definitely on a short list. And I think this ice version here with the light blue dial, this 179, is a real fantastic piece and pretty cool watch to look at. All right, guys, well, if you enjoyed taking a look at these new Seiko watches, definitely give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Also, which one of these three would be the one that you would snag? I'd like to see comments down below. Also, head over to teddybaldassarre.com, check out that Seiko blog, also shop around, look at the different watches, different straps, and in addition, you can also get 5% off your first purchase. Be sure to also follow me on Instagram to stay up to date with content, see some cool photos of watches. But guys, thank you again so much for watching, be well, and I will see you all very soon.